No. I've uh I've never done any sort of mobile game development before. And if I have my way, I probably won't ever do it again. I laugh now, but I was not a pleasant character for a little while there. It was just See, it sounds weird to say it was difficult because I don't really know if it really was on my end, at least during the first half of it. Uh, but second half was really hard. Uh, that was not fun trying to get Google Play to work. You'd think it'd be easy, but it's not. it's uh, it's a little more complex than just a single command, unfortunately. As far as the most difficult thing about this game, well, there's sort of a tie between a couple different things. Firstly, I couldn't playtest this thing on my phone. No joke. I could playtest it in the Unity editor, no problems at all for the most part. But I couldn't play the game on my phone. Like I could get to the main menu and I could like bring up the achievements, but that was it. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't open up one of the episodes or play infinite mode. So that was quite a challenge. It was fun working around that. Um, the other thing I would say that's kind of tied with that for biggest challenge was getting the Google Play stuff to work. Like in this particular game's case, all we were really looking to do was get the achievements in. Um, do such and such thing X amount of times. Woohoo! Achievement unlocked. Good job, gamer. Woohoo! And kind of like with a lot of this whole development process, it's like it sounds simple, and on paper it kind of is, but the actual implementation of features or whatever was a little more difficult. Not just something you could kind of look up online, and that was probably the biggest thing too. Like this was not like any other issue that I had had with any other game I've ever worked on before. Usually you can go online, kind of Google, hey, I'm getting such and such error, or you're trying to do a certain thing and don't really know where to start. You can Google that, and you can maybe find some forum posts on like Stack Overflow or the Unity forums, wherever, and they could, you could read up and help you along. And worst case scenario, make a forum post of your own, which I've had to do a few times. But in this case, that wasn't really there. A bunch of Google searches for how to get the Google Play services working in your Unity project. There was just hardly any info that I could find, which was infuriating. We tried, taking it to like there was some Thagus and Harsh took it to like some Facebook group. I don't have Facebook. I have, and all goes well, I'll never need one. Yeah, they took it there. I think I made a Unity post, or maybe I made a post somewhere. I don't remember if I did or not. A lot of it's kind of a blur. But yeah, it's just we could not find any real advice or help with that issue, which made getting that very, very simple thing, Google Play services, achievements, so much more difficult. And no matter how many times I would scour and read and reread the documentation on how to do it, it just wouldn't work for the longest time. So that was a right pain in the butt. Come to think of it, I was saying, what was the biggest challenge? That or the issue with not even being able to play the game on my own phone. And now that I think about it, it was probably the Google Play services, because unlike getting the game to even play on my phone, I could get around that, just play testing on the Unity editor, and then use the Unity remote app on your phone, hook it to your computer, and just play testing the editor like that. And you could get around that, no problem. It was an inconvenience, and some things I just flat out couldn't test. Because of that, I would just have to say, hey, builds up in, our Google Drive, and could somebody please test this for me, because I can't. But we could at least get around that. We knew what we were doing there. But with Google Play services, no matter how many times we would search and search and search the internet, couldn't find much of anything that was really useful. And the things that we found that were kind of useful didn't work. So, yeah, Google Play, that was a delight. So fun. Not. I don't know really about anything that would necessarily threaten the existence of the game. Not so sure that there was anything that serious. Because, Harsh may disagree, and maybe Thages too, but it could have survived without achievements. And, I guess even ads too, but then of course we wouldn't make a dime off of it. But probably proving that we can make a decent game comes first anyway, so one way or another it get released, we'd suck it up, I guess. But again, Harsh and Thages may disagree with that, and that's fine if they do. So for that reason, I can't really say there was anything to me that sounded like it would threaten the existence of the game, really. Now, the only thing during that really could have threatened the existence of Freefall was not so much anything in development, but more something that kind of came after. Like say hour or so after release, and we find out, oh, there's this major bug that we didn't know about before that maybe somebody else found, and we can't figure out how to recreate it and then fix it from there and all those things. And that's very much a pessimistic way of looking at things. I know that's very much worst case scenario, but there was never really anything during development that ever jumped out at me and said, oh my gosh, this could totally ruin us and this silly little game that we're making. Just not much. I guess I just don't let myself get bothered enough. I think for the most part I'm fairly level-headed. Just takes a lot to get under my skin. And so I don't really feel threatened by development issues so much. I just kind of take it as it is what it is stride. And even if it were to, God forbid, get killed off in some way, the game never comes out, never finishes or anything like that, even if something like that were to happen, I probably would have ultimately, it would have sucked, but I probably would have ultimately just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, well, suck it up, Buttercup. Let's learn from your mistakes and try it again. This is all you can really do. I'm going to assume that when this question here, is it hard working on a game, while having other commitments? When I'm being asked that, I'm basically being asked, is it hard having a full-time job I work for a bank, um, and still having to come home, maybe, take an hour, however long to eat, maybe goof around a bit, and then go work on game. Is that the hardest part? Um, Not really. No, the hardest part is everything else, those other commitments, the smaller things that, it doesn't sound like it should be a big deal, but it winds up being a really big deal. Working 8 hours in a day and then coming here, back to my little apartment here and working, basically on code for however long I can squeeze in is not really the issue for me. I don't really mind working because, I mean, what else am I going to do? I mean, yeah, I could hang out with my fiance or something, or I could watch a movie, but I don't really mind working because it's something to do. Now, trying to balance, getting your game finished and then doing everything else, it can be tricky. Again, not so much with a full-time job because here's the thing. It's like having the full-time job, that's set. I have a specific time that I go in every day, and then a specific time that I leave, and then I go about the rest of my day. That's set. And so I can easily plan around that. Where it gets interesting is, again, those little things like I mentioned my fiance. We have a weekly date night, usually on Fridays, which I just kind of take as my day off, basically, and then just work the other days. But then what if, I live by myself. You have to do grocery shopping. You got to feed yourself. Or maybe you have an appointment at some point, after, typical hours. Maybe you're meeting someone somewhere to get something. Let's just say, like, my sister needs a ride somewhere, which doesn't happen often, but it comes up. It's just those little things. Housekeeping, gotta vacuum the floors now and then. You gotta do your dishes. You need clean underwear. Having to do all those things and then try to get into your code and squash whatever bugs you find. That's when it gets interesting. Full-time job isn't, that's a part of my day. That's a part of my routine. It's hardwired into my muscle memory. And even better, I say that in the loosest of ways, the job itself doesn't really take a whole lot of mind power. I check checks and I ask people for a good mailing address because for X reason we don't have one. Post office says, like, oh, well, it's just we're missing an apartment number, so you need to figure out what apartment number it is. That's all simple stuff. Give them a ring and just ask for them for, that information. Tell them who you're from, then update the info, remail it out. And then again, checking checks, which is, basically, hey, does this signature match with the signature we have on file? Yes? Okay, good. It's good to go. It is very much a boring job, but it gets me food, and I mean, it's not all bad. I mean, there's a little more to it, but for the most part, that is what I do. So no, it's just everything after the full-time job, that can trip you up. Now, I should probably be careful how I say that, because I'm not saying all those things are bad. Like, I have absolutely no issues spending a bunch of time with my fiance. Are you kidding me? I wish I had more time. But if you want to get something done, you have to cut something out. Like, in my case, it's fun time. Like, I don't really allow myself much time to play any games. And I instead take that time to maybe, well, if it's not like housekeeping tasks, maybe just spend a little extra time with my fiance, or something like that. We go out and get ice cream somewhere. Doing things like that instead of going home and just kind of laying on my couch for an hour.
that's where it sometimes can be tricky because, you know, let's just be honest. People want to just be by themselves once in a while. I'm very much that way. But at the same time, um, you also know that there's just some things that you may have to do, like grocery shopping, or that you know you'll feel really bad for not doing, like having an hour to go eat ice cream with your love. So um, just trying to strike that balance of making sure it gets done, but still, leaving that room for those other things that are important to you is interesting. I think I'm pretty well starting to master it now. Of course, I say that and then watch as like maybe next time my schedule's all over the place or something. The only thing that were really used, to code it was Unity itself. We use an engine. We did not make the whole thing from scratch because that would be a nightmare. um, we would just use Visual Studio to code it because that's what Unity is kind of defaults with, and you're using C sharp, so um, pretty simple stuff. There's really not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, if you know Unity, you already know what it's like working with it. If you know how to program it all, you already probably have a bit of an idea what it's like working with C sharp. I will say, coming out of this, I probably have found that I really enjoy C sharp as probably maybe a favorite language so far, which I know sounds silly because it's very similar to things like C++ and, just C. But yeah, not much to say about that. It's just Unity, C sharp, and that's it from me, really. Though, I mean, nope, wait, that's something else. Yep, nope, just an engine and Visual Studio. Don't start with mobile. And in fact, I would probably just tell you to stay away from mobile, but I realize that's probably not practical advice for some people. But seriously though, probably the best advice I can give is maybe two bits here. Firstly, develop for a platform that you know you're gonna like developing for, like in my case, PC, which I think is probably, most people's. But if you vastly prefer making mobile games, then make mobile games. Do you basically. The other thing is be sure to make, just a few random things, just to kind of, practice and teach yourself a few things. Don't make your first game thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna sell this," because you're not. that doesn't work. No, when you're first trying to learn how to program, you're trying to learn how to make games. Just think of some idea of yours. It's maybe fairly simple. Don't make your first idea a Witcher-esque RPG because you're trying to do too much there, pal. Maybe just find some simple game idea of yours that you've always thought, "Oh, hey, wouldn't this be kind of fun?" And just give it a go, and just kind of start programming your first game with it. Like in my case, I just did a very arcadey space shoot 'em up thing as the very first thing I did that wasn't a tutorial. Like that was the first thing I made on my own time, from using what knowledge I had at the time. I was like 14. And I'll tell you right now, it'll probably suck. My first game sucked. I don't know if I still have it, and even if I did, I don't know if I'd want to play it. It's probably not gonna be great. By that point, though, you may not care because you'll be too happy with the fact that you made your first game. But even if you get past that excitement and realize, this game's crap, don't let that bring you down, really, because that's just the way you're gonna start. When you're making art. You're not going to be, a regular, you're not going to make a Mona Lisa from the beginning. You're going to have to just try a few smaller, simple things. If you're a painter, you're not going to get right into, making something like what Picasso made. You're probably going to start by making just simple geometric shapes, squares, circles, triangles, that kind of thing. This is, I'm assuming here, I'm just kind of based off what I know. And then once you kind of get good at those, then you maybe practice just drawing what you see right in front of you, and then you maybe start trying to practice drawing, what's in your head. And you just practice. You try to grow in the scale of what you're doing. Like after I did the space shooter thing, I did a little side scroller. I hesitate to really call it. Well, I guess it was a shooter. But it may as well have been an on-rail shooter. Probably would have been more fun if it was more specifically an on-rail shooter. But I made, kind of a side-scrolling shooter thing, and I tried to have like a story in it. There'd be like cutscenes and that sort of thing, dialogue, and it was a dumb story, but and actually I know I have that one lying around here, and no, I am not sharing that with anyone. And the next thing I did was I tried taking the first game and just kind of expanding on it a bit, trying different things. Like in the second version of that space shooter thing, I had like where the player could switch between different types of weapons and that kind of thing. And yeah, you just try to you start small, and with each new project you try something. You either make something bigger or you do something very, very specific. You have like this very specific feature or gimmick in the game. In my case, I think it's better to just go a little bigger. Try to increase the scale a little bit. But if you'd rather take it a direction where with each game you just kind of focus on more of a specific gimmick or feature, then, go right ahead. But I would tell you, don't really focus so much on that. You can save that sort of thing for when you're much more experienced in trying to make a game that you would sell. Just start with a first game that's simple, and then after you finish that, go on to your second game. Try to increase, the scale of it a bit. Maybe have more weapons. Have more complexity and player controls, and you just kind of keep doing that until